https://www.youtube.com/watch V equals FF4 DRWKAX2 4. Why are you wearing my shirt? I asked my CEO. And she replied, Don't you remember last night? Sao cô lại mặc áo của tôi? Tôi hỏi CEO của mình và bà ấy trả lời, anh không nhớ đêm qua sao? The storm had come out of nowhere, the way Colorado storms do in late September. 1 minute clear skies, the next a wall of water that turned the roads into rivers. Liam had the truck's wipers on full blast, but they barely made a dent in the sheets of rain hammering the windshield. His phone sat in the cup holder, vibrating with increasingly urgent weather warnings he kept ignoring. He was already late. Emma would be fine. She was 8 now, responsible enough to follow the rules. Doors locked, no stove, stay upstairs if anything felt wrong. But still, every minute he spent out here was a minute she was alone in that house, and the guilt sat heavy in his chest like a stone. The job had run over. Mrs. Chen's water heater had been worse than she'd described over the phone. These things always were. And by the time he'd finished replacing the corroded valve and testing the pressure, the sky had already turned that particular shade of green-gray that meant trouble. He'd tried to leave earlier, but she'd insisted on making him tea, on paying him cash right then, because she didn't trust Venmo, on telling him about her grandson, who was also good with his hands. Liam had smiled and nodded and pocketed the bills and thought about Emma doing her homework at the kitchen table, glancing at the clock. Now the road was barely visible. The rain came at the windshield almost horizontally, and the truck's headlights carved out maybe 10 feet of visibility before everything dissolved into static. He'd lived in Colorado his whole life, knew these mountain roads like the back of his hand, but tonight they felt different, hostile. The asphalt was slick with runoff, and twice already the truck had hydroplaned slightly, the tires losing grip for half a second before catching again. He should pull over, wait it out. But Emma was home, and home was still another 15 minutes away, and the tree appeared in his headlights like an accusation. It had fallen across the road, a massive ponderosa pine that must have been there for decades before the wind finally found the right angle. Liam slammed on the brakes, and the truck slid, the world outside the window turning into a blur of black and gray and green. He felt the tires catch, felt the vehicle slow, felt his heart trying to climb out through his throat. The truck stopped maybe 5 feet from the fallen trunk. Jesus, Liam breathed, gripping the steering wheel hard enough that his knuckles went white. His hands were shaking. He forced himself to breathe, to think. The tree blocked the entire road. He'd have to backtrack, find another route. That meant another 20 minutes, maybe 30 with the weather. He grabbed his phone, started to pull up the GPS. That's when he saw the car. At first he thought it was just wreckage, debris from the storm. But then the lightning flashed, and for one crystalline second everything was illuminated. The luxury sedan wrapped around a second tree just off the road. The hood crumpled like paper. The driver's side door caved in. The car was black, or had been. Now it was mostly just twisted metal and broken glass, steam rising from somewhere under the hood. Liam's brain did the math automatically. The tree across the road hadn't been down long, maybe minutes, which meant the car had hit the other tree recently, very recently. He was out of the truck before he'd consciously decided to move. The rain hit him like a physical force, instantly soaking through his jacket. He ran toward the wreck, his boots splashing through water that was already ankle-deep on the shoulder. Up close, the car was even worse than he'd thought. The entire front end had accordioned on impact. The hood bent upward at an angle that shouldn't have been possible. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, and something was leaking. Oil, maybe, or coolant, or gas. That thought made him move faster. "Hey!" he shouted, cupping his hands around his face to peer through the driver's side window. "Anyone in there?" At first he saw nothing. The interior was dark, the airbags deployed, everything obscured by shadow and rain and the weird angle of the car. Then the lightning flashed again, and he saw her. A woman, slumped over the steering wheel, dark hair plastered to her face. Blood, a lot of it, running down from somewhere above her hairline. She wasn't moving. Liam tried the door, locked or jammed or both. He yanked on the handle anyway, putting his full weight into it, but the metal didn't budge. The frame was too bent. The impact had sealed it shut. "Ma'am!" He pounded on the window. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. She didn't even twitch. The smell hit him then, sharp and chemical and wrong. Gas, definitely gas. He looked down and saw it, a dark stream running out from under the car, mixing with the rainwater. His brain started screaming at him to move, to get away, to get back in the truck and call 911 and let the professionals handle this. But she wasn't moving, and that gas was pooling. And somewhere under that crumpled hood, something was hot enough to make steam. Liam had maybe done 2 truly stupid things in his entire life. Joining the army at 18 had been 1. What he was about to do was definitely number 2. He looked around for something heavy, a rock, a branch, anything. His hands closed on a piece of concrete, probably a chunk of the road that had broken off during some long-ago winter. It was roughly the size of a softball and felt like it weighed 10 pounds. "I'm sorry about this," he said to the unconscious woman, and then he swung. The window didn't break on the first hit, or the second. Safety glass was designed to resist exactly this kind of thing. But Liam had been swinging hammers for a living for the better part of a decade, and he knew how to put his body weight behind a blow. On the 3rd try, the glass finally gave, shattering into 1,000 tiny cubes that cascaded inward. He dropped the concrete and reached through, feeling for the door lock. Found it. Pulled. The door still wouldn't open. The frame was too warped. But now he could reach the woman. "Okay," he muttered, talking to himself as much as to her. "Okay, we're doing this." She was buckled in. Of course she was. His fingers found the seatbelt release and he pressed, but nothing happened. The mechanism must have been damaged in the crash, or maybe the angle was wrong. He pressed harder, wiggling it, and finally felt it give. The belt retracted with a snap. Now came the hard part. Liam had pulled people out of vehicles before, back in his army days. Training exercises mostly, though once in Afghanistan it had been for real. The principle was always the same: support the neck and spine, move carefully, don't make anything worse. But that assumed you had time and equipment and help. He had none of those things. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger. He could see it now in the glow from the truck's headlights, the puddles spreading, catching the light like oil on water. Somewhere under the hood, metal was still ticking as it cooled, or heated. He didn't know which, and he wasn't going to wait to find out. He got his arms under her shoulders and started to pull. She was dead weight, unconscious, her head lolling to the side. Blood from the cut on her forehead smeared across his jacket. She was smaller than him, most people were, but gravity and the angle of the seat were working against him. He braced his feet against the car's frame and heaved. She moved maybe 6 inches. "Come on," he grunted, adjusting his grip. His shoulders were screaming, his back was screaming, every muscle in his body was screaming. He pulled again, harder this time, and she slid another few inches. Her head bumped against the doorframe, and he winced, but he couldn't stop now. One more pull, then another. His boots were slipping in the mud, but he kept his balance, kept pulling, until finally, she was clear of the car. He lowered her to the ground as gently as he could manage, checking her pulse. It was there, thready and weak, but there. She was breathing, too, shallow but steady. The cut on her forehead was still bleeding, but it didn't look as bad as the amount of blood had suggested. Head wounds always bled like crazy. He needed to get her away from the car, now. Liam scooped her up, easier now that he had leverage, and carried her toward the truck. She weighed maybe 120 pounds, and his arms shook with the effort, but he made it. He was just lowering her into the passenger seat when he heard it. A soft whomp, like someone lighting a gas grill. He turned around in time to see the flames. They'd started small, just a flicker near the front wheel well, but they were spreading fast, racing along the trail of gasoline. Within seconds, the entire undercarriage was on fire. Within 10 seconds, the flames had reached the interior. Liam slammed the passenger door shut and ran back to the driver's side, his heart hammering. He threw the truck into reverse, backing up until they were a safe distance away. And then he just sat there, breathing hard, watching the luxury sedan burn. The explosion, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. Just a dull crump and a bloom of orange light that momentarily turned the rain into fire. The car's frame shuddered and collapsed in on itself. And then there was nothing but flames and smoke and the sound of the storm. Liam looked over at the woman in the passenger seat. She still hadn't moved. Her clothes were expensive. He could tell that much, even soaked and muddy. The kind of tailored pieces that cost more than his truck. Her shoes were designer, her watch was probably worth 6 months of his income, and even unconscious and bleeding, she had this air about her, like she'd never been cold or hungry or afraid in her entire life. What the hell had she been doing out here in this storm? He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. It rang once, then went to a weird static sound that meant the cell towers were probably down. He tried again. Same thing. A third time, and this time he didn't even get a ring, just a recorded message about network congestion. Fantastic, he muttered. The hospital was 40 minutes away in good weather. In this, with the roads flooding and trees down and who knew what else, it might as well have been on the moon. He could try to make it, but if the truck got stuck or he hit another obstacle, they'd both be in trouble. And she needed help now. Liam looked at the woman again. She was breathing. Her pulse was steady. The bleeding had mostly stopped. He wasn't a doctor, but he'd had enough combat first aid training to know that she probably wasn't in immediate danger of dying. Probably. He made a decision. Home was 10 minutes away if he took the back roads. He had a first aid kit there, better than the cheap one in the truck. He could clean her wounds, make sure there was nothing seriously wrong, and then when the storm cleared, he could get her to a real hospital. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than sitting here hoping his phone would magically start working. He put the truck in gear and started driving. The back roads were worse than the highway. Narrower, less maintained, more prone to flooding. But Liam knew them. Had driven them 1,000 times, in snow and rain, and once memorably during a wildfire evacuation when the sky had turned orange and ash had fallen like snow. He drove carefully, the truck's headlights cutting through the rain, and tried not to think about the fact that he had an unconscious stranger in his passenger seat and no way to explain any of this if something went wrong. Emma. He needed to call Emma, let her know he was okay, but his phone still wasn't getting signal, and anyway, she was probably asleep by now. It was past 9. She'd be in bed, hopefully not worried, definitely not aware that her dad had just pulled someone out of a burning car. He'd tell her in the morning. Maybe. Or maybe he'd leave out the burning car part. The house appeared out of the darkness like a sanctuary. It was small, just a 2-bedroom ranch that he'd bought for almost nothing because it needed work, but he'd spent 3 years fixing it up, and now it was solid. The lights were on upstairs, which meant Emma was either still awake or had fallen asleep with the lamp on again. Liam pulled the truck into the driveway and sat there for a moment, trying to figure out his next move. He couldn't carry the woman and explain this to Emma at the same time. One problem at a time. He got out, ran to the front door, let himself in. "Em?" he called up the stairs. "You still up?" No answer. He took the stairs 2 at a time, pushed open her bedroom door. She was asleep, sprawled across her bed with a book still open next to her. Her nightlight, a cheap plastic thing shaped like a moon, cast everything in a soft blue glow. Liam felt something in his chest unclench. She was safe. She was fine. He pulled the blanket up over her shoulders, closed the book, turned off the lamp. She didn't even stir. Back downstairs, he grabbed the first aid kit from the bathroom and a handful of towels. Then he went back out to the truck. The woman still hadn't moved. Liam checked her pulse again, still there, and then carefully lifted her out of the passenger seat. She was lighter than he remembered, or maybe adrenaline was making him stronger. He carried her inside, nudged the door shut with his hip, and stood there in the living room trying to decide where to put her. The couch was the obvious choice, but it was old and sagging and probably not great for someone with potential injuries. His bedroom was cleaner, and the bed was firm, and this was insane. He was bringing a stranger into his house, into his bedroom, where his daughter was sleeping upstairs. But what else was he supposed to do? Leave her in the truck? He carried her to his room and laid her down on the bed as gently as possible. Her head left a smudge of blood on his pillow, but he could wash that later. Right now, he needed to make sure she wasn't dying. Liam had done this before. Not exactly this, but close enough. He'd patched up guys in the field, cleaned wounds, wrapped injuries. The principles were the same. He pulled off her shoes, they were heels, impractical and expensive, and set them aside. Then he started checking for injuries. The cut on her forehead was the obvious one. It was maybe 2 inches long, deep enough to scar, but not deep enough to need stitches. Probably. He cleaned it with antiseptic from the kit, working carefully, and then covered it with gauze and medical tape. She didn't react to any of it, which was either good or very bad. No obvious broken bones, no deformities. He checked her pupils with his phone's flashlight. They were unequal, which meant a concussion at best and a brain injury at worst. But there was nothing he could do about that here. He just needed to make sure she was stable until he could get her to a hospital. He covered her with a blanket, propped her head up slightly on a pillow, and then sat back on his heels and tried to think. She needed monitoring. If she had a serious head injury, she could stop breathing, could slip into a coma, could... He was spiraling. He forced himself to stop, one step at a time. He'd check on her every hour. If anything changed, if she got worse, he'd figure something out. Maybe the phones would be working by then. Maybe the roads would be clear. Maybe. Liam stood up, his knees cracking, and looked down at the woman on his bed. In sleep, she looked younger, vulnerable. The rain had washed away whatever makeup she'd been wearing, and without it, she just looked like a person, tired and hurt and very far from wherever she was supposed to be. "You're going to be okay," he said quietly, not sure if he was talking to her or himself. Then he went to check on Emma. "Yes, I'm Sasuke." The storm didn't let up. Liam spent the night alternating between his daughter's room and his own, checking on both of them, making sure they were still breathing. It was irrational. Emma was fine. She was always fine. But he couldn't shake the feeling that if he looked away for too long, something terrible would happen. Around 2 a.m, he gave up on sleep entirely. He made coffee in the kitchen, standing at the counter and listening to the rain hammer the roof. The power had flickered a few times but hadn't gone out, which was something. His phone still had no signal. The landline, he still had one, mostly for emergencies, was dead. He was completely cut off. It should have been terrifying, but instead Liam felt a weird kind of calm. He'd been in worse situations. Afghanistan had been full of worse situations. At least here he had walls and a roof and clean water. At least here the only thing trying to kill him was the weather. He checked on the woman again. Still unconscious, but her breathing was steady. Her pulse was stronger than it had been. The cut on her forehead had stopped bleeding entirely. He changed the gauze anyway, just to be safe, and noticed for the first time that she had a small scar above her left eyebrow. Old, faded. A childhood injury, maybe. She was pretty, he realized. Not in the polished magazine way, but in a real way. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, dark lashes against pale skin. He wondered who she was, what she did, why she'd been out on that road in the middle of a storm. Not his business. He was just keeping her alive until he could get her to people who actually knew what they were doing. He went back to the kitchen, drank more coffee, and waited for dawn. The woman woke up a little after 6. Liam was in the kitchen, making breakfast for Emma, when he heard the sound. A soft gasp, then silence. He put down the spatula and went to check, half expecting to find her unconscious again. Instead, she was sitting up in bed, one hand pressed to her forehead, looking around his room like she'd woken up on Mars. "Hey," Liam said from the doorway, keeping his voice gentle. "You're okay. You were in an accident. I brought you here because the hospital was unreachable." She turned to look at him, and her eyes were sharp, alert. The kind of eyes that didn't miss anything. "Where's here?" Her voice was hoarse, but steady. "My house. About 20 miles from where you crashed. The storm took out the phones and the roads. I couldn't get you to a hospital last night." "Last night." She repeated it like she was testing the words. "What time is it now?" "A little after 6. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "My car? Gone. It caught fire after I pulled you out. I'm sorry." "You pulled me out." Again, that repetition, like she was trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. "Yeah?" Before it caught fire. "Yeah?" She stared at him. He stared back. He had the weird sense that she was doing some kind of calculation, running numbers in her head. "You don't know who I am," she said finally. "No, ma'am." "But you pulled me out anyway." "You were unconscious in a car that was leaking gas. Wasn't really a decision." She laughed at that, and it turned into a wince. Her hand went back to her forehead, where the bandage was. "Did you do this?" "Yeah, you had a pretty bad cut. I cleaned it and wrapped it. You should probably get it looked at by a real doctor, but the storm," she finished. "Right." She was looking around the room again, taking in the details. The plain walls, The cheap furniture, the pile of clean laundry on the chair that he hadn't had time to put away. Her gaze lingered on the photo on the nightstand. Liam and Emma at the park last summer. Is that your daughter? Yes. Where is she? Upstairs, still asleep. Something in the woman's expression shifted. Softened, maybe. You brought a stranger into your house, where your daughter sleeps. You were hurt. You could have left me at a hospital, dropped me off and left. The hospital was 40 minutes away in good weather. Roads were flooded. You needed help sooner than that. So you brought me here. She said it slowly, like she was trying to understand a language she didn't speak. To your home. Gave me your bed. Patched me up. She paused. Do you do this often? Pull people out of burning cars, first time. That got another laugh, softer this time. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, and Liam saw her wince again as her body reminded her that she'd been in a car accident. I should call someone, she said. Let them know I'm alive. Phones are still down. I've been checking. You're welcome to try, but no signal. Right. She closed her eyes for a moment, and Liam saw the exhaustion there, the fear that she was trying very hard not to show. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you leave me there? It was such a strange question that Liam didn't know how to answer it at first. He settled for the truth. Because you needed help. That's it? That's it. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, like she was trying to see through his skin to something underneath. What's your name? Liam. Liam Parker. Ava Sinclair. She held out her hand, formal despite the situation. He shook it. Her grip was firm. Nice to meet you, Ms. Sinclair. Ava, she corrected. And thank you for everything. From upstairs came the sound of small feet hitting the floor, then the creak of the stairs. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway a moment later, still in her pajamas, her hair a mess. Dad? She looked from Liam to Ava and back again, confused. Who's that? This is Ava, Liam said. She was in an accident last night. I'm helping her until the road's clear. Emma studied Ava with the frank curiosity of an 8-year-old. Are you okay? I'm okay, Ava said. Thanks to your dad. He's good at fixing things, Emma said matter-of-factly. Then to Liam, can we have pancakes? Sure, kiddo, go wash up. Emma disappeared back upstairs and Ava smiled. She's sweet. She's my whole world, Liam said simply. Something in Ava's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. She stood up slowly, testing her balance, and Liam moved forward instinctively in case she fell. But she was steady enough. I should get out of your way, she said. Let you make breakfast. You should sit down before you fall down, Liam countered. Come on, I'll make enough for 3. And because she didn't really have a choice, Ava Sinclair, billionaire CEO, though Liam still didn't know that, followed a handyman in a worn flannel shirt into his small kitchen and sat down at his cheap table and watched him make pancakes for his daughter. It was the strangest morning of her life. The pancakes were lopsided and slightly burned on one side, but Emma ate them without complaint, chattering between bites about a project she had due at school. Ava sat across from her, nursing a cup of coffee that Liam had pressed into her hands, and tried to remember the last time she'd been in a kitchen this small. Or any kitchen, really. She had people who cooked for her. So you're staying here because of the storm? Emma asked, directing the question at Ava with the blunt curiosity that only children could get away with. Just until the road's clear, Ava said. Your dad was kind enough to help me. He helps lots of people, Emma said proudly. Last week he fixed Mrs. Patterson's porch for free because she's old and doesn't have money. Emma, Liam warned from where he stood at the stove. What? It's true. Emma turned back to Ava. He says if you can help someone, you should, even if they can't pay you. Ava felt something twist in her chest. She looked at Liam, who was very deliberately focused on flipping another pancake. His ears had gone slightly red. That's a good philosophy, Ava said quietly. Yeah, but sometimes I wish we had more money, Emma continued, oblivious to her father's discomfort. Like for new shoes, mine have a hole. She lifted her foot to show Ava the worn sneaker, and sure enough, there was a small tear near the toe. Finish your breakfast, Liam said, his voice gentle but firm. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. Eat. Emma rolled her eyes but obeyed, and Ava found herself smiling despite everything. There was something achingly real about this scene. The cramped kitchen with its outdated appliances, the mismatched chairs, the little girl with holes in her shoes, and a father who fixed porches for free. It was so far removed from Ava's world that it might as well have been another planet. Her world. The thought brought everything rushing back. The meeting she'd been driving to when the storm hit. The presentation she'd spent weeks preparing. The investors who were probably wondering where the hell she was. Her assistant, Marcus, who'd called her 3 times before she'd finally left the office, warning her about the weather. She needed to get in touch with someone. Anyone. Let them know she was alive. Can I use your computer? She asked Liam. To send an email, since the phones are down. Liam paused, spatula in hand. Don't have one. Ava blinked. A computer? Yeah, just the phone, and that's not working. What about a tablet, a laptop? No, ma'am. She stared at him, trying to process this. How do you work? Send invoices? Keep track of jobs? I have a notebook, Liam said, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I write everything down. People pay me cash or check. I deposit it at the bank. Pretty simple. Simple. Ava lived in a world where she received hundreds of emails before breakfast, where her calendar was managed by 3 different people, where she carried 2 phones and a laptop everywhere she went. The idea of running a business with just a notebook was incomprehensible. She searched for a word that wouldn't sound condescending. Analog. Works for me, Liam said with a shrug. He slid another pancake onto Emma's plate. Besides, less technology means more time with her. Emma beamed at that, and Ava felt that twist in her chest again. When was the last time someone had chosen to spend time with her? Really chosen it. Not because they wanted something or needed to network or were trying to get ahead. She couldn't remember. The storm continued outside, rain lashing against the windows. Ava's head was starting to pound. Whether from the concussion or the situation, she wasn't sure. She touched the bandage on her forehead gingerly. You should rest, Liam said, noticing. You hit your head pretty hard. Concussion protocol says you need to take it easy. I don't have time to take it easy. You don't have much choice. He was right, and she hated it. Ava Sinclair was not a person who sat still. She built things, fixed things, moved things forward. Being trapped in a stranger's house with no way to contact her company was its own kind of torture. But her body had other ideas. As soon as Emma finished breakfast and ran upstairs to get dressed for what Liam called Indoor Adventure Day, the exhaustion hit Ava like a wave. Her limbs felt heavy, her eyes wanted to close, and the pounding in her head intensified. Couch or bed? Liam asked, watching her sway slightly. I've already taken your bed. The couch is fine. Couch it is. He guided her to the living room, and she sank into the worn cushions gratefully. The couch was old and sagging, but it was comfortable in a way her $12,000 designer sofa had never been. Liam draped a blanket over her, the same blanket from his bed, she realized. It still smelled like him, and she felt herself drifting before she could protest. Thank you, she mumbled. Get some sleep, Liam said. I'll wake you in a couple hours to check on you. Don't have to. Concussion, he reminded her. Doctor's orders. Well, handyman's orders, but close enough. She wanted to argue, but sleep pulled her under before she could form the words. When Ava woke, the light had changed. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, and through the window she could see gray sky instead of black. She had no idea how long she'd been out. Her head still hurt, but the sharp edge had dulled to a manageable ache. She sat up slowly, testing her body. Sore, bruised, but functional. The bandage on her forehead felt tight. She could hear voices from somewhere else in the house. Liam's low rumble and Emma's higher pitch, talking about something that made Emma laugh. Ava stood and followed the sound to a small room off the hallway. It was set up as a workspace, with a cluttered desk, shelves full of tools and parts, and a large corkboard covered in drawings. Emma's drawings, Ava realized. Crude but enthusiastic sketches of houses and trees and stick figures labeled "Me and Dad." You're up, Liam said, looking up from where he was showing Emma how to sand a piece of wood. How's the head? Better. How long was I asleep?
About 3 hours. I checked on you twice. You were breathing fine. Pulse was good. 3 hours. Ava never slept 3 hours in the middle of the day. She barely slept 6 hours at night. But here, in this small house with its quiet rhythms, her body had apparently decided to shut down and recover whether she wanted it to or not.
I'm teaching Emma basic woodworking, Liam continued. She wants to build a birdhouse. A purple birdhouse, Emma corrected. For purple birds. I don't think birds care about color coordination, Liam said, amused. Well, they should. Ava watched them work together, Liam's large hands guiding Emma's smaller ones along the wood grain. There was an ease between them, a natural rhythm that spoke of years of these moments. It made something in her ache. Can I help? The words were out before Ava could stop them. Both Liam and Emma looked at her in surprise. You want to build a birdhouse? Emma asked skeptically. I want to try, Ava said. If that's okay. Liam studied her for a moment, then nodded. Sure. Here. He handed her a piece of sandpaper. Start with this piece. You want to go with the grain, not against it. Nice and smooth. Ava took the sandpaper and the wood, feeling awkward. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, restructured entire corporations, faced down hostile boards of directors. But this simple task, made her hands uncertain. Like this? She asked, making a tentative stroke. More pressure, Liam said. The wood can take it. You're not going to hurt it. She pressed harder and felt the grain smooth out under her hand. It was oddly satisfying. Better, Liam said. Keep that up. They worked in companionable silence for a while, Emma humming to herself, Liam measuring and cutting, Ava sanding with more concentration than the task probably required. The rain continued its steady patter against the windows. The house creaked and settled around them. It felt safe here, contained. Like the rest of the world had ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the small room and these simple tasks. So what do you do? Emma asked eventually, breaking the silence. For work? Ava hesitated. How did you explain being a CEO to an 8-year-old? I run a company. What kind of company? We make software, programs that help other businesses work better. Like computer games? Not exactly. More like tools. To help people be more efficient. Emma wrinkled her nose. That sounds boring. Emma, Liam said. But Ava laughed. It is boring, she admitted. Most of the time, but it pays well. Do you have a kid? Emma asked. No. A husband? No. A dog? No. Emma looked genuinely puzzled. So what do you do when you're not at your boring job? It was such a simple question, but Ava found she didn't have a good answer. What did she do? She worked. She went to the gym because her trainer scheduled it. She attended charity events because her publicist said it was good for the company image. She had dinner with people who wanted things from her. She slept 4 hours a night in her empty penthouse and woke up to do it all again. I work a lot, she said finally. That's sad, Emma said with the brutal honesty of childhood. Emma, that's rude, Liam said, but he was looking at Ava with something that might have been sympathy. It's okay, Ava said. She's not wrong. The birdhouse took shape slowly. Emma lost interest after an hour and wandered off to play, leaving Ava and Liam alone in the workshop. They didn't talk much, but the silence was comfortable. Ava found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, maybe ever. There was something meditative about the work, the repetitive motions, the smell of sawdust and wood oil. You're good at this, Liam said eventually. I'm just sanding. Still, most people get impatient, want to rush through it. You're taking your time. I don't usually take my time with anything, Ava admitted. I noticed. She looked up, surprised. How could you possibly notice that? You've known me for less than 12 hours. The watch, Liam said, nodding at her wrist. You've checked it about 15 times since you woke up, even though it's not working. The way you hold yourself, like you're ready to run at any second. The fact that you were driving through a storm to get somewhere instead of waiting it out. He paused. You don't seem like a person who stops much. Ava looked down at her watch. The face was cracked, the hands frozen at 7:43. The moment of impact, she realized. She hadn't even noticed it had stopped. I can't afford to stop, she said quietly. Why not? Because the second I do, someone else will take my place. That's how it works at the top. You're only valuable as long as you're indispensable. Liam was quiet for a moment, running his hand along a piece of wood, checking for rough spots. That sounds exhausting. It is.
So why do it? Another simple question with no simple answer. Why did she do it? For the money? She'd had more money than she could spend by the time she was 25. For the power? Maybe. For the challenge? Partly. Because she didn't know how to do anything else? That was closer to the truth. Because I'm good at it, she said. And because I built it. The company. I started it in a garage 7 years ago with 2 other people and a borrowed server. Now we have offices in 12 countries and 3,000 employees. That means something. It does, Liam agreed. But what does it cost you? Ava didn't answer. She went back to sanding, putting more force into it than necessary, and Liam didn't push. Emma reappeared around lunchtime, demanding grilled cheese. Liam left to make it, and Ava found herself alone in the workshop, surrounded by the evidence of his life. The tools were old but well-maintained, organized with care. The drawings on the corkboard showed a progression, Emma's artistic skills improving year by year. There were photos, too, tucked between the sketches. Liam and Emma at various ages. A woman who must have been Emma's mother, though she only appeared in the older photos. Ava studied that woman's face. Pretty, young, smiling at the camera with Liam's arm around her shoulders. There were no recent photos of her, no wedding ring on Liam's finger. Ava could do the math. She died when Emma was 2, Liam said from the doorway, and Ava jumped, feeling caught. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. It's okay. Car accident, actually. Drunk driver ran a red light. He came into the room, looked at the photo Ava had been studying. Her name was Sarah. We were high school sweethearts. Got married young, had Emma, thought we had forever. He was quiet for a moment. Turns out forever is a lot shorter than you think. I'm so sorry, Ava said again, inadequately. It was 6 years ago. You learn to live with it. Emma doesn't remember her much, which is its own kind of tragedy. He looked at Ava. That's why I do what I do. The free repairs, the helping people. Sarah always said that's what mattered. Not how much money you made, but what you did with it. How you treated people when you didn't have to. He smiled, but it was sad. Figured I owed it to her to try. Ava felt something crack open in her chest. This man had lost his wife, was raising his daughter alone, barely scraping by from what she could see, and he still found time to fix porches for free. Still pulled strangers from burning cars. Still believed that helping people mattered more than money. She'd spent 7 years building an empire. He'd spent 6 years building a life. She wasn't sure which was more impressive. Lunch is ready, Liam said, breaking the moment. Hope you like grilled cheese. I haven't had grilled cheese in probably 10 years, Ava admitted. Well then, you're in for a treat. I make them with 3 types of cheese. It's my signature move. He said it with such earnest pride that Ava couldn't help but smile. I can't wait. The afternoon passed in a strange, suspended way. The storm continued, keeping them isolated, and Ava found herself settling into the rhythm of the house. Emma taught her a complicated clapping game. Liam showed her how to properly clean a wrench. They played cards, a game called Rummy that Ava barely understood but Emma dominated. It was the most normal day Ava had experienced in years, and the strangest part was how much she didn't hate it. Around 4, Liam tried the phone again. Still nothing. Might be out until tomorrow, he said. Sometimes these mountain storms knock everything out for days. Days? Ava tried to keep the panic out of her voice. I'm sure the main roads will clear sooner. Once they do, I can drive you wherever you need to go. I need to go back to Denver. My company, they'll be worried. They know you were driving in the storm. They probably figure you holed up somewhere safe. He was right, but it didn't make her feel better. Marcus would be losing his mind. The investors would be furious. The board would be circling like sharks, sensing weakness. Every hour she was gone was an hour someone else could use to undermine her position. Hey, Liam said gently, noticing her distress. You can't control the weather. You can only control how you deal with it. That's very zen. That's very practical. Getting worked up won't make the roads clear faster. Might as well make the best of it.
And what does making the best of it look like? Well, Liam said, glancing at the clock, Emma usually does her homework around now. Then we make dinner together. After that, maybe a movie if the power stays on. Nothing fancy, but it's a routine. It works for us. A routine. Ava couldn't remember the last time she'd had one of those. Every day was different, every schedule packed to the minute with meetings and calls and obligations. The idea of doing the same thing at the same time simply because that's what you did. It was foreign and oddly appealing. Can I help with dinner? She asked. Liam raised an eyebrow. You cook? No, but I can learn. He smiled at that. All right, we're doing spaghetti tonight. Nothing fancy, but Emma likes it. I like everything except mushrooms, Emma chimed in from where she was sprawled on the floor with her math homework. Mushrooms are disgusting. Noted, Ava said. The kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people, let alone 3, but they made it work. Liam showed Ava how to chop onions without crying, how to tell when the garlic was ready, how to layer flavors in the sauce. His instructions were patient and clear, and Ava found herself actually enjoying the process. You're a natural, Liam said when she successfully flipped the garlic without burning it. I'm following instructions. That's different. Still counts. Emma set the table without being asked, folding napkins into elaborate shapes that didn't quite work but showed effort. Liam pulled out a bottle of wine, left over from a job, the client gave it to me, and poured Ava a glass. Should I be drinking with a concussion? She asked. Probably not, but 1 glass won't kill you. They ate at the small kitchen table, plates nearly touching, and Ava was struck by the intimacy of it. Not romantic intimacy, nothing like that, but the closeness that came from sharing space with people who weren't trying to impress you or get something from you. Emma told a rambling story about a boy at school who'd eaten paste. Liam teased her about her spelling homework. Ava mostly listened, absorbing this glimpse into a life completely different from her own. This is really good, she said, meaning the spaghetti, but also meaning everything. Thanks, Liam said. Emma's a good sous chef. I'm the best sous chef, Emma corrected. Can't argue with that. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Ava her room. It was small, crammed with books and toys and drawings, every surface covered with the evidence of a child's life. A life that was simple and full and happy despite the holes in her shoes and the small house and the absence of her mother. This is where I sleep, Emma said, pointing to a bed covered in stuffed animals. And that's my bookshelf. And that's the fort Dad helped me build. She gestured to an elaborate structure made from blankets and chairs in the corner. It's a very impressive fort, Ava said seriously. Do you want to see inside? I would love to. They crawled into the fort together, and Emma showed Ava her treasures, special rocks, a bird's feather, a photo of her and Liam at the zoo. Each item came with a story, told with the unselfconscious enthusiasm that only children possessed. Ava listened and remembered being young, before the drive and the ambition and the constant need to prove herself had taken over. She'd collected rocks too once. Emma, time for your bath, Liam called from downstairs. Emma groaned. Do I have to? Yes, school tomorrow if the road's clear. Fine. She crawled out of the fort, then turned back to Ava. You're nice. I'm glad Dad saved you. I'm glad too, Ava said, and meant it. While Emma was in the bath, Ava helped Liam clean the kitchen. They worked in silence, falling into an easy rhythm. She washed, he dried. The radio played softly in the background, some country station that Liam hummed along to without seeming to realize it. She likes you, Liam said eventually. She's a good kid. Yeah, she is. He was quiet for a moment. She doesn't warm up to people easily. After Sarah died, she got cautious, protective of our little bubble, but with you, she just opened right up. Maybe she senses that I'm not a threat. Maybe. Liam dried another plate, set it carefully in the cabinet. Or maybe she just knows good people when she sees them. Ava stopped washing, surprised. You don't know me. I could be terrible. Could be. But I don't think you are. Based on what? Based on the fact that you're in my kitchen washing dishes when you could have demanded I take you to a hotel. Based on the fact that you spent an hour sanding wood without complaining. Based on the fact that you crawled into a blanket fort with an 8-year-old and listened to her talk about rocks. He looked at her directly. Rich people don't usually do that. You figured out I have money. The watch was a hint, the shoes, the way you hold yourself. He shrugged. Besides, that car you were driving. I looked it up on my phone before it died. Starts at about 200 grand. Ava winced. I didn't buy it to show off. Didn't say you did, just stating facts. The company bought it. For safety. It's supposed to be one of the safest cars on the market. She laughed bitterly. A lot of good that did. You're alive, Liam pointed out. So it did its job. Because you pulled me out. The car kept you alive long enough for me to do that. Give it some credit. They finished the dishes and Liam made tea, actual tea, brewed in a pot, not from a Keurig or a high-end espresso machine. They sat in the living room, Ava curled up in the corner of the couch, Liam in the armchair that had seen better days. Can I ask you something? Ava said after a while. Sure. Well, why handyman work? You clearly have skills. You could probably make more money doing something else. Liam considered this. I was in the army for 4 years. Infantry. Did a tour in Afghanistan, saw some things I'd rather not talk about. When I came back, I had this idea that I needed to do something important, big. Sarah was pregnant with Emma, and I wanted to be the kind of father she could be proud of. He took a sip of tea. So I tried the corporate thing, got a job at a construction company, worked my way up to project manager, made decent money, hated every second of it. Why? Because it wasn't real. I spent all day in meetings, arguing about budgets and timelines and politics. Came home exhausted without having actually built anything. Meanwhile, Emma was growing up with a father who was always stressed and never present. He set down his mug. Sarah died when I was in the middle of this big project, massive office building downtown. I had to take time off for the funeral, and my boss said I needed to get my priorities straight. Like my wife dying was an inconvenience to his construction schedule. That's horrible, Ava said quietly. Yeah, so I quit. Started doing handyman work, small jobs, helping people, being home for Emma, making enough to get by. He smiled. Turns out getting by is enough when you're actually living your life instead of just surviving it. Ava felt those words hit her like a physical blow. Surviving versus living. How much of her life had been the former and not the latter? I envy you, she said before she could stop herself. Why? Because you figured it out. What matters? I'm 30 years old, and I still don't know. Sure you do, Liam said. You just don't want to admit it. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're sitting here in my house, drinking tea, having the first genuine conversation you've probably had in months. And you look more relaxed than you did when you first woke up this morning. That tells me you know exactly what matters. You're just scared to choose it. Ava wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. He was right. Somewhere deep down, beneath the armor of ambition and achievement, she knew. She'd always known. But knowing and doing were different things. It's not that simple, she said finally. It never is, Liam agreed, but that doesn't make it less true. Emma appeared then, pajama-clad and smelling of soap, ready for her bedtime story. Liam excused himself to go read to her, and Ava sat alone in the living room, listening to the murmur of his voice through the ceiling, thinking about everything and nothing. Her phone was upstairs, dead and useless. Her laptop was wherever her wrecked car had ended up, probably in some impound lot. Her company was running without her. The world was spinning on its axis, and for the first time in 7 years, Ava Sinclair wasn't at the center of it. And the terrifying part was how little that bothered her right now. When Liam came back downstairs, Ava was still on the couch, staring at her dead watch like it might suddenly come back to life and tell her what to do next. She wants to say goodnight, Liam said. Ava looked up, surprised. To me? Yeah. Apparently you're part of the routine now. She followed him upstairs to Emma's room. The little girl was tucked under her blankets, surrounded by stuffed animals, her eyes already heavy with sleep. Good night, Ava, Emma said, her voice small and soft. Good night, Emma. Will you still be here in the morning? Ava glanced at Liam, who shrugged. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. I hope so, Emma said, and then she was asleep just like that, the way children could drop off mid-thought. Liam pulled the blanket up to her chin, turned on the nightlight, and led Ava back downstairs. The house felt even smaller at night, the walls closer, the quiet more pronounced. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving behind the sound of water dripping from the eaves. "You can have my room again," Liam said. "I'll take the couch." "No, absolutely not. I've already displaced you enough. You're recovering from a concussion. You need the bed. And you need sleep so you can function tomorrow. I'm fine on the couch." They stared at each other, locked in a stalemate of stubbornness. Finally, Liam sighed. "How about this? You take the bed. I'll take the floor in Emma's room. That way we're both uncomfortable and nobody wins." Despite everything, Ava laughed. "That's possibly the worst compromise I've ever heard." "Yeah, well, I'm not great at negotiations. That's probably why I'm a handyman and not a CEO. Trust me, most CEOs aren't great at negotiations either. They just have lawyers to handle the actual talking." Liam smiled at that. "All right, couch it is for you, bed for me. Final offer." "Deal." He brought her a pillow and a better blanket, showed her where the bathroom was, made sure she had water in case she needed it during the night. The care was so automatic, so genuine, that Ava felt something shift in her chest. When was the last time someone had taken care of her? Not assistants doing their jobs, not housekeepers she paid, but actual care from a person who expected nothing in return? "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it." "I know you do," Liam said. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you back to your world." Her world. The phrase felt strange now, like referring to a place she'd visited once but didn't quite remember. Liam headed toward the stairs, then paused. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think you're running from the wrong things." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're afraid of stopping because you think it means losing everything. But maybe what you're really afraid of is finding out what you have isn't worth keeping." He didn't wait for a response, just headed upstairs, leaving Ava alone with thoughts she didn't want to examine too closely. She lay on the couch in the dark, listening to the house settle around her. Water dripping, wood creaking, the hum of the refrigerator, sounds she never heard in her penthouse with its triple-pane windows and white noise machine. This was real noise, life noise. Her mind kept circling back to Liam's words. Running from the wrong things. Was she? She'd built her company from nothing, had fought for every inch of ground, had proved everyone wrong who'd said a woman couldn't make it in tech. That had to mean something. But lying here, in this small house with its cheap furniture and genuine warmth, she couldn't quite remember why any of it had seemed so important. Sleep took her eventually, and she dreamed of burning cars and balance sheets and a little girl asking her what she did when she wasn't working. Morning came too early. Ava woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Her head still ached, but it was better than yesterday. She sat up slowly, testing her body. Sore, stiff, but functional. Liam was in the kitchen, already dressed, making breakfast. Emma sat at the table in her school uniform, swinging her legs and reading a book. "Morning," Liam said, pouring Ava a cup of coffee without asking. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I expected." She took the coffee gratefully. "Is the power back?" "Yep. Came on around 5. I already tried the phone. Still no signal, but the news says the main road should be clear by noon." Noon. That meant she could leave. Get back to Denver, back to her company, back to her real life. The thought should have filled her with relief. Instead, it felt like loss. "I should call someone," she said, "as soon as the phones work." "There's a landline at the hardware store in town, about 3 miles down the road. I need to grab some supplies anyway. I can take you after I drop Emma at school." "You don't have to. Ava." He said her name gently, but firmly. "Let me help." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Emma finished her cereal and grabbed her backpack, which was decorated with patches and pins and had seen better days. Liam packed her lunch, peanut butter and jelly, an apple, some crackers, and Ava watched this small domestic ritual with something that felt dangerously close to longing. "Ready, kiddo?" Liam asked. "Ready. Bye, Ava." "Bye, Emma." The little girl paused at the door, then ran back and hugged Ava quickly before Liam could stop her. Ava froze for a second, then hugged her back, and Emma was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of strawberry shampoo. "Sorry," Liam said. "She's not usually that affectionate with strangers." "It's fine," Ava said, and meant it. The drive to Emma's school took 15 minutes through winding roads still wet from the storm. Ava sat in the passenger seat of Liam's truck, watching the landscape roll by. Mountains in the distance, trees everywhere, small houses scattered across the hillsides. It was beautiful in a way her city never was. "You grew up here?" she asked. "Born and raised. My dad was a mechanic. My mom taught elementary school. We didn't have much, but it was enough." He glanced at her. "What about you?" "Seattle. My parents were both engineers, Microsoft back in the 90s. They expected me to follow in their footsteps." "Did you?" "Sort of. I studied computer science, worked for a few companies, hated all of them, so I started my own." She looked out the window. They thought I was crazy. "Too risky," they said. "Get a stable job, work your way up, retire with a pension." "But you didn't." "No. I wanted to build something that mattered, something that was mine." "And did you?" It was the same question she'd been asking herself all night. "I thought I did. Now I'm not so sure." Liam pulled up to a small school building, and Emma hopped out with a quick wave. Ava watched her run to join a group of other kids, all talking and laughing, and felt that longing again. "She's lucky to have you," Ava said quietly. "I'm lucky to have her," Liam corrected. "She's the only reason I didn't completely fall apart after Sarah died. Having someone who needs you, it keeps you going when you don't think you can." The hardware store was a weathered building with a creaky porch and a sign that hadn't been updated since the 80s. Inside, it smelled like sawdust and oil, and every surface was crammed with tools and supplies. The man behind the counter, easily 70, with hands that looked like they'd built half the town, greeted Liam by name. "Liam Parker, haven't seen you in a few weeks. Who's your friend?" "This is Ava. She needs to use the phone." The old man gestured to an ancient landline on the counter. "Help yourself." Ava picked up the receiver and dialed Marcus's number from memory. It rang once, twice, and then his voice came through, sharp with worry. "Marcus Chen." "Marcus, it's me." There was a beat of silence, then an explosion of relief and anger. "Ava, where the hell have you been? We've been calling you for 18 hours straight. The investors are threatening to pull out. The board is having a meltdown, and Jenkins from legal thinks you're dead in a ditch somewhere." "I was in an accident. Car's totaled. I've been staying with someone who helped me." "An accident? Are you hurt? Where are you?" "I'm fine. Minor concussion, some bruises. I'm about 20 miles outside Denver." 20 miles? I'll send a car right now. What's the address?" Ava looked around the hardware store, at Liam browsing lumber in the back, at the old man pretending not to listen while obviously listening. "Actually, I can get a ride back. I'll be in the office by this afternoon." "This afternoon? Ava, you should go to a hospital, get checked out properly." "I'm fine, Marcus. You're always fine." His voice softened. "Look, I'm glad you're alive, but we have a situation here. The investors moved the meeting to tomorrow morning. They want answers about the Q4 projections, and frankly, after you disappeared, they're spooked. Tomorrow morning. Back to the grind. Back to the performance. Back to being Ava Sinclair, CEO, instead of just Ava." "I'll be ready," she said automatically. "Good. I'll have the team prep the updated numbers. And Ava, don't scare us like that again." She hung up and stood there for a moment, her hand still on the receiver. The real world was calling, literally, and she had to answer. That's what responsible CEOs did. They showed up, they performed, they proved that one setback wouldn't break them. "Everything okay?" Liam asked, appearing beside her with an armful of wood. "Fine. My assistant is sending a car." "You don't need a ride back?" "No, She stopped. "Actually, would you mind driving me? The car might take a while, and I'd rather not wait here." It was a lie. She knew Marcus would have a car there in 30 minutes if she asked, but she wasn't ready to leave yet, and she didn't want to examine why too closely. "Sure," Liam said. "Let me just pay for this, and we'll head out." The drive back to his house was quiet. Ava watched the scenery pass, memorizing it somehow, like she needed to remember what this place looked like, what it felt like to be somewhere that wasn't optimized for productivity and profit. Back at the house, she gathered the few things she had: her ruined shoes, her broken watch, her dignity. Liam offered her a clean shirt to replace the blood-stained one, and she accepted it, changing in the bathroom. The shirt was worn and soft and smelled like laundry detergent and something else, something that was just Liam. When she came out, he was waiting by the door, keys in hand. "You know," he said slowly, "you could stay another day. Make sure the concussion is really healed." "I can't. I have a meeting tomorrow." "Right, the meeting." He studied her face. "Is it worth it?" "What?" "Whatever you're rushing back to. Is it worth it?" Ava wanted to say yes immediately, automatically, but the words stuck. She thought about her empty penthouse, her calendar full of obligations, her inbox with its thousands of unread messages. She thought about Emma's hug this morning, about sanding wood in Liam's workshop, about grilled cheese sandwiches and blanket forts and conversations that didn't have an agenda. "I don't know," she admitted, "but it's what I have." "It doesn't have to be." "Yes, it does. I built this company. 3,000 people depend on me. Investors trust me with their money. I can't just walk away because I spent one nice day making spaghetti." "I'm not saying walk away. I'm saying maybe look at what you're walking toward." They stood there in his small entryway, and Ava felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. The company, the investors, the board, the constant pressure to be perfect and brilliant and unshakable. And standing in front of all that weight was this man in his worn jeans and flannel shirt, who fixed things for a living and raised his daughter alone and thought that helping people mattered more than making money. "I have to go," she said quietly. "I know." The drive to Denver took 40 minutes. Liam's truck was old and loud, and the radio didn't work, so they drove in silence. Ava watched the landscape change from rural to suburban to urban, watched the small houses give way to apartment buildings and strip malls, and finally the glass towers of downtown. "Where to?" Liam asked. She gave him the address of her building, and he whistled low. "Nice neighborhood." "It's convenient." "I bet." He pulled up to the curb outside a gleaming high-rise, all steel and glass and expensive landscaping. The doorman was already moving toward the truck, probably to tell them they couldn't park there. Ava saw the exact moment he recognized her. His eyes widened and he changed direction toward the entrance instead, no doubt calling up to her penthouse. "Well," Liam said, "I guess this is it." "Yeah." Ava unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't move to get out. "Thank you for saving my life, for taking care of me, for letting me into your home." "Anyone would have done it." "No, they wouldn't have." She looked at him directly. "You're a good person, Liam Parker. Your daughter is lucky to have you. Take care of yourself, Ava Sinclair." She should have gotten out then, should have walked away and gone back to her life and let this strange interlude become a story she told at dinner parties. But instead she heard herself say, "Can I give you something? For your trouble? For Emma's shoes?" Liam's expression changed, hardened just slightly. "No. I have money. I want to help. I don't need your money. Everyone needs money. Not everyone wants to be paid for doing the right thing." He looked away from her, out at the expensive building, the manicured lawn, the world she inhabited. "You should go. Your people are waiting." He was right. Through the glass doors, she could see Marcus pacing in the lobby, phone to his ear, probably coordinating her re-entry into civilization. But something about the dismissal in Liam's voice made her pause. "I didn't mean to offend you." "You didn't. We're just different people from different worlds, that's all." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Go save your company, Ava. That's what matters to you." She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that he mattered too, that these 2 days had meant something. But Marcus was coming through the doors now, relief and exasperation warring on his face, and the moment was slipping away. Ava got out of the truck. "Goodbye, Liam." "Goodbye." She closed the door, and he pulled away from the curb without looking back. She stood there watching his truck disappear into traffic, feeling like she'd just lost something she didn't know she needed. "Ava, thank God." Marcus reached her, his tablet already out, already talking. "We have so much to cover. The investors want a full briefing, the board wants reassurance, and legal needs you to sign off on the new contracts. Also, Jenkins set up a doctor's appointment for you in an hour. Non-negotiable," he said, given the accident. She let him lead her inside, let the familiar rhythm of work wash over her. The doorman greeted her with carefully professional concern. The elevator was exactly as she'd left it, gleaming and empty. Her penthouse was exactly as she'd left it, pristine and cold and perfectly decorated by someone she'd hired. Marcus followed her in, still talking. "I had your assistant order you new clothes. They're in your bedroom. And I called your insurance about the car. Totaled, obviously, but they'll handle it. Now, about tomorrow's meeting. Marcus," she held up a hand, "give me 5 minutes." He looked startled. Ava Sinclair didn't ask for breaks. "Of course. I'll be in the living room pulling up the updated projections." She went to her bedroom and closed the door. The new clothes were laid out on the bed, sharp, professional, expensive. She looked at them, then at herself in the mirror. She was still wearing Liam's shirt. It was too big, worn at the collar, completely inappropriate for a CEO. She didn't take it off. Instead, Ava sat on her $1,000 sheets and pulled out her phone. It had finally charged, and the notifications were overwhelming. Hundreds of messages, missed calls, emails marked urgent. The world demanding her attention, her time, her decision-making. She ignored all of it and opened her contacts. Then she stopped. She didn't have Liam's number. Hadn't thought to ask for it. Hadn't thought she'd need it. The realization hit her harder than it should have. She'd spent 2 days with someone who'd fundamentally shaken her understanding of what mattered, and she had no way to contact him. No way to say thank you properly. No way to tell him that he was wrong. It wasn't just one nice day making spaghetti. It was more than that. It had to be more than that. Someone knocked on the door. "Ava? The doctor's office called. They can take you early if you leave now." "Coming?" she called back. She stood, smoothed down Liam's shirt, and looked at herself one more time. The woman in the mirror looked lost. Tired. Like she'd been running for so long she'd forgotten why she started. Ava changed into the new clothes, professional armor back in place. Hung Liam's shirt in the closet where it looked completely out of place among her designer pieces. Then she went out to face Marcus and the projections and tomorrow's meeting and all the things that were supposed to matter. But as she listened to Marcus brief her on investor concerns and market conditions, her mind kept drifting to a small house on the outskirts of Denver, to a workshop filled with sawdust and a kitchen barely big enough for 3 people and a little girl who collected rocks and didn't care about designer shoes, to a man who'd pulled her from a burning car and asked for nothing in return except that she think about what she was running toward. And for the first time in 7 years, Ava Sinclair wondered if she'd been running in the wrong direction all along. The doctor cleared her. Mild concussion, some bruising, but nothing that wouldn't heal. He recommended rest, which made Marcus visibly anxious because rest meant not working, and not working meant the world might end. Ava assured them both she was fine, took the prescription for painkillers she wouldn't fill, and went back to the penthouse to prepare for tomorrow's meeting. The numbers were bad. Not catastrophic, but bad enough that the investors would ask pointed questions. Q4 projections were down 8% from initial estimates, and the new product launch had been delayed twice already. On paper, it looked like the company was losing momentum. In the room tomorrow, it would look like she was losing control. Ava spent 6 hours reviewing data, preparing responses, anticipating every possible attack. Marcus brought her dinner from her usual place, some overpriced salad that tasted like nothing, and she ate it without tasting it while reading market analyses. This was familiar. This was safe. This was what she knew how to do. But her mind kept wandering. She'd catch herself staring at the city lights outside her floor-to-ceiling windows, thinking about how different they looked from Liam's small house. Here, everything was clean lines and muted tones and carefully curated emptiness. There, everything had been cluttered and lived in and real. Around midnight, Marcus finally left, making her promise to get some sleep. She promised, then immediately broke that promise by pulling up her laptop and starting a new search. She told herself she was just curious, just wanted to make sure he was legitimate, not some con artist who preyed on stranded billionaires. But as she typed Liam Parker Handyman Denver into the search bar, she knew she was lying to herself. The results were sparse. A few mentions in local community forums, people recommending his services. A Facebook page that hadn't been updated in 2 years. No website, no Yelp reviews, no digital footprint to speak of. He really did run his business from a notebook. She found a property record for his house, purchased 6 years ago for $73,000. She did the math automatically. Her watch had cost more than his house. The thought made her feel sick. On impulse, she searched for Sarah Parker, found an obituary from 6 years back. Sarah Marie Parker, beloved wife and mother, taken too soon. A single blurry photo showed a smiling woman with kind eyes. The obituary mentioned that she'd volunteered at the local food bank, had loved gardening, and was survived by her husband Liam and daughter Emma. Ava closed the laptop and sat in the dark, feeling like a stalker. What was she doing? Liam had made it clear where they stood. Different worlds, different lives. He'd done his good deed, and now they both moved on. That was how it worked. Except she couldn't move on. 2 days shouldn't have been enough time to upend her entire worldview, but somehow they had. She kept thinking about Emma's question. What do you do when you're not working? Kept thinking about Liam asking if any of it was worth it. Kept thinking about how she'd felt more alive in his cramped kitchen than she had in months of board meetings and investor calls. Sleep came eventually, restless and full of dreams she couldn't quite remember. The morning brought her back to reality with brutal efficiency. She dressed in her armor, a tailored suit that cost $4,000, heels that added 3 inches and hurt like hell, makeup that took 20 minutes and made her look like she'd slept 8 hours instead of 4. By the time Marcus arrived with her coffee order, she was Ava Sinclair, CEO, and the confused woman from yesterday was buried deep. The meeting was in the main conference room, the one with the view of the mountains. Ironic, since the investors would spend the entire time looking at screens instead of scenery. Ava arrived 15 minutes early, reviewed her notes one last time, and put on the expression she wore for these things, confident, unshakable, slightly amused that they'd doubt her. The investors filed in. Robert Chen, who'd been with her since the beginning, Patricia Wolf, who'd joined during Series B and had never quite trusted Ava's instincts, David Morrison, the newest addition, young and aggressive and always looking for a reason to challenge her decisions, and 3 others whose names she knew but whose opinions rarely mattered. They followed wherever the wind blew. Ava, Robert said, genuine concern in his voice. We heard about the accident. Are you all right? I'm fine. Thank you for asking. We were worried, Patricia said, though her tone suggested she'd been more annoyed than worried. Going dark for 18 hours in the middle of a quarter end is unusual for you. It was unavoidable, but I'm here now and I'm ready to discuss Q4. Marcus pulled up the presentation, and Ava walked them through it. The numbers, the projections, the market conditions that had contributed to the shortfall. She was smooth, professional, hitting all the right notes. This was what she was good at, taking bad news and spinning it into a narrative of resilience and strategic adjustment. But halfway through, David interrupted. With all due respect, these adjustments feel reactive rather than proactive. We're looking at the 3rd consecutive quarter of missed projections. At what point do we acknowledge that the problem isn't market conditions? It's leadership? There it was, the challenge she'd been expecting. Ava met his eyes calmly. Our market share has grown by 12% this year despite these setbacks. Our customer retention rate is at 93%. We're still outperforming every competitor in our space. You're also burning through cash faster than projected, Patricia added. The product delay is costing us millions. The delay ensures we launch with a superior product instead of rushing something half-finished to market. I'd rather be 6 months late and excellent than on time and mediocre. The market doesn't care about excellence if we run out of runway first, David said. The meeting devolved from there into the usual dance of concerns and reassurances. Ava parried every thrust, backed up every claim with data, reminded them that she'd built this company from nothing and had earned the right to their trust. By the end of 2 hours, she'd held her ground. Barely. We're not pulling funding, Robert said finally. But Ava, we need to see improvement next quarter. Real improvement, not just explanations. You will, she promised. They filed out, leaving her alone with Marcus, who looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 hours. That was rough, he said. That was Tuesday. Ava gathered her notes, her hands steady despite the adrenaline crash hitting her system. What's next? Product meeting at 2, team stand-up at 3:30. You have that interview with TechCrunch at 5. A schedule packed so tight there was no room to think. Perfect. Thinking led to questioning, and questioning led to places she couldn't afford to go right now. She made it through the product meeting on autopilot, barely hearing the updates about back-end architecture and user interface testing. Made it through the stand-up, nodding at the right moments, asking the right questions. But during the TechCrunch interview, something shifted. The reporter was young, probably fresh out of journalism school, nervous but trying to hide it. She asked the standard questions about company growth and market strategy and innovation. Ava gave the standard answers, the polished sound bites she'd perfected over years of practice. Then the reporter said, "You're one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in tech. What advice would you give to women who want to follow in your footsteps?" Ava opened her mouth to give her usual response about persistence and vision and not taking no for an answer. But what came out instead was, "Make sure it's what you actually want." The reporter blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Make sure what you're chasing is actually what you want, not just what you think you should want. Because once you get it, you're stuck with it." There was a long pause. The reporter glanced at her notes, clearly thrown. "That's not the answer I expected." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises today." Marcus, sitting off to the side, looked like he wanted to intervene, but Ava waved him off. She finished the interview with her usual platitudes, but the damage was done. She'd shown a crack, and in her world, cracks were dangerous. After the reporter left, Marcus approached carefully. "Are you sure you're okay? That didn't sound like you." "I'm fine." "Ava, I said I'm fine, Marcus." He backed off, but she could see the concern in his eyes. Marcus had worked for her for 4 years, had seen her through every crisis, every triumph, every late night and early morning. He knew her tells. And right now, every tell was screaming that something was wrong. She made it through the rest of the day somehow, answered emails, approved budgets, sat in on a design review. But her heart wasn't in it. She kept thinking about Liam's workshop, about the smell of sawdust and the satisfaction of smoothing wood with her own hands. Kept thinking about Emma's laughter and the simplicity of grilled cheese sandwiches. By 7, Marcus finally convinced her to go home. She took the elevator down to the parking garage where her new car was waiting, identical to the one that had burned, because her insurance company had specific instructions to replace like with like. She sat in the driver's seat, key in hand, and couldn't make herself start the engine. What was she doing? Where was she going? Home to her empty penthouse, to sleep 4 hours, to wake up and do this all over again tomorrow? For what? To prove she could? To make more money she didn't need? To maintain an empire that was starting to feel more like a prison? She thought about what Liam had said. You're running from the wrong things. Maybe what you're really afraid of is finding out what you have isn't worth keeping. Her phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. We need to talk about succession planning. Call me tomorrow. Succession planning. Code for, we're losing faith in you. Ava had fought too hard to let them push her out now. She'd prove them wrong, show them she was still the best person to lead this company. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from her banking app, her charitable foundation's monthly report. She'd set it up 3 years ago on the advice of her accountant. Good for taxes, good for PR. It donated to various causes, all vetted and approved and completely impersonal. She scrolled through the list of recipients, youth programs, education initiatives, all worthy causes that she'd never once visited or engaged with beyond signing the checks. She thought about Liam fixing Mrs. Patterson's porch for free, about him saying that what mattered wasn't how much money you made, but how you treated people when you didn't have to. Ava started the car and drove, but not toward home. She found herself taking the highway out of the city, heading toward the mountains, toward the outskirts where the houses got smaller and the streets got quieter. She told herself she was just driving, just clearing her head, but she knew exactly where she was going. Liam's house looked the same as it had 2 days ago. Small, modest, with a truck in the driveway and lights on in the windows. She parked across the street and sat there, engine idling, feeling like a stalker again. What was she going to do? Knock on his door? Say what exactly? That she couldn't stop thinking about him? That 2 days in his world had made her question everything about her own? The front door opened and Emma came out, backpack bouncing as she ran toward the truck. Liam followed, keys in hand, saying something that made Emma laugh. They looked so natural together, so easy. A father and daughter heading out for an evening errand, completely unaware that they'd turned someone's life upside down just by being themselves. Ava should have driven away, should have left them alone, gone back to her world, forgotten this whole thing. But instead she found herself getting out of the car. Liam noticed her first. He stopped mid-step, surprise crossing his face, then something else. Concern, maybe, or wariness. Ava? He said. Emma turned, saw her, and lit up. Ava, did you come to visit? Ava didn't have a good answer. I was in the area. Liam's expression said he knew that was a lie. His house was nowhere near anything anyone would be in the area for unless they lived here. But Emma was already running over, chattering about school and the birdhouse they'd finished and a science test she'd aced. That's wonderful, Ava said, crouching down to Emma's level. I knew you were smart. Dad helped me study. He's really good at science. Emma looked back at Liam. Can Ava come with us? We're getting pizza. I'm sure she's busy, Liam started. I'm not, Ava said quickly. Too quickly. I mean, if it's okay, I don't want to intrude. Liam studied her for a long moment. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if he was annoyed or confused or something else entirely. Finally, he said, It's just pizza. I like pizza. Dad, she can sit in the middle, Emma said, already pulling Ava toward the truck. The pizza place was a local joint with plastic booths and a jukebox that probably hadn't worked since the 90s. Emma ordered pepperoni, Liam got something called the Mountain Special, and Ava chose margarita because it was the only thing on the menu she recognized from her usual restaurants. So, Liam said once Emma had run off to play the ancient arcade game in the corner, you were in the area. I was driving, thinking. I ended up here. That's a pretty specific accident. I know. Ava traced a pattern in the condensation on her water glass. I wanted to see you again, to say thank you properly. You already thanked me. Not properly. I tried to give you money, which was insulting. I should have just said that what you did meant something to me, that it changed something. Liam was quiet for a moment. Changed what? I don't know yet. That's the problem. She looked up at him. I went back to my life. Had my meeting, fought my battles, did all the things I'm supposed to do. And the whole time, I kept thinking about your kitchen, about sanding wood, about Emma asking me what I do when I'm not working. And what's the answer? I still don't have one. She laughed, but it came out bitter. I'm 30 years old, I run a billion-dollar company, and I don't know what I do when I'm not working because I'm always working. That's pathetic, isn't it? It's not pathetic. It's just sad. The pizza came and Emma returned, and the conversation shifted to safer topics. School, the weather, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Emma was adamant that it did. Liam argued it was an abomination, and Ava found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in days. After dinner, Emma wanted to show Ava the finished birdhouse. They drove back to the house, and Emma ran inside to get it, leaving Ava and Liam alone in the driveway. I shouldn't have come, Ava said. This is weird, right? Showing up unannounced? A little weird, Liam admitted, but I get it. You do? Yeah, you're trying to figure something out, and you think maybe we have the answer. But we don't, Ava. We're just living our lives the best way we know how. That's all anyone can do. Emma came back out with the birdhouse, painted a bright, defiant purple. It was crooked, and the paint job was messy, and it was absolutely perfect. It's beautiful, Ava said honestly. We're going to hang it in the backyard tomorrow, Emma said proudly, so the birds have somewhere nice to live. Looking at that birdhouse, at Emma's proud smile and Liam's gentle expression, Ava felt something crack open in her chest. These people had so little compared to her, and yet they had everything that mattered: purpose, connection, joy in small things. Can I ask you something? She said to Liam while Emma ran inside to put the birdhouse away. Sure. If you could have anything, any amount of money, any life you wanted, what would you choose? Liam didn't hesitate. This one. Emma, this house, my work. I wouldn't change a thing. Really? Nothing? Well, maybe I'd fix the leak in the bathroom ceiling, and Emma could use new shoes, he smiled. But the important stuff? I'm good. Ava felt tears prick her eyes, which was ridiculous. She never cried. Crying was weakness, and weakness was death in her world. But standing here in this driveway, looking at this small house, where a man and his daughter had built a life that mattered, she couldn't help it. I think I made a mistake, she said quietly. What kind of mistake? All of them, every choice I've made for the past 7 years. I built this company thinking it would make me happy, thinking success and money and power would fill whatever was missing. But it didn't. And now I'm stuck with this life I don't even want, and I don't know how to get out of it. Liam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're not stuck, you just think you are. 3,000 people depend on me. Investors trust me with billions of dollars. I can't just walk away." I'm not saying walk away. I'm saying figure out what you actually want and then find a way to get there. Maybe that means changing how you run your company. Maybe it means stepping back. Maybe it means something else entirely. But you have choices, Ava. You've always had choices. Have I? Yeah, you just haven't been brave enough to make them. The words hit her like a slap. Not brave enough. She'd started a company in a male-dominated industry, had fought her way to the top, had stared down boardrooms full of men who thought she didn't belong. And he was saying she wasn't brave, but then she realized he was right. All of that had been easy compared to this. Fighting for success, proving everyone wrong, that had been the safe choice, the expected choice. What would take real courage was admitting that maybe winning the game wasn't worth it if the prize didn't matter. Emma came back outside, chattering about birds and colors, and the moment passed. Ava said goodbye, thanked them for pizza, and drove back to the city with her mind spinning. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk in the penthouse, staring at her laptop, thinking about what Liam had said. You have choices. But what were they? She couldn't just abandon her company. That would be irresponsible. But she also couldn't keep living like this, running on empty, chasing validation that never quite arrived. She thought about her charitable foundation, the impersonal donations to worthy causes she'd never seen. What if she actually did something with it? Something real, something that mattered. Not just tax write-offs and PR, but actual change. The idea formed slowly, then all at once. She pulled up her laptop and started typing, and by the time the sun came up, she had the outline of something that looked almost like hope. Marcus arrived at 8 with coffee and found Ava still in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, eyes red from lack of sleep, but blazing with something he hadn't seen in months. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked. "No, but I figured something out." She turned the laptop toward him. "Look at this." He read through her notes, his expression shifting from concern to confusion to something that might have been alarm. "You want to restructure the foundation? Turn it into an actual operational charity?" "Not just restructure. Transform it. Instead of writing checks to other organizations, we build programs directly. Skills training for people who need it. Tool libraries. Business development support for tradespeople. Real help, not just money." "Ava, we're a tech company, not a nonprofit. The foundation is separate. It has its own funding stream, and I want to be involved, actually involved, not just signing checks." Marcus set down his tablet carefully. Where is this coming from? Does it matter? It does if you're making major decisions based on... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Based on something other than sound business strategy. Ava stood, pacing to the window. The city sprawled below, all glass and steel and ambition. "I've been running this company for 7 years. In that time, I've made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I've proved every doubter wrong. I've won. And I'm miserable, Marcus. Completely, utterly miserable. So you want to start a charity? I want to do something that matters. Something real." She turned to face him. "I met someone. The person who pulled me out of that car. He's a handyman. Lives in a house that costs less than my watch. Raises his daughter alone. And he's happier than I've ever been because he spends his days actually helping people instead of just moving money around. That's very touching, but nothing. I'm doing this, Marcus. The question is whether you're with me or not." He studied her for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Completely. The board will fight you on this. The investors will say it's a distraction. Let them. I have controlling interest. They can complain all they want." Marcus sighed, but there was something almost like a smile playing at his lips. "You know what? I haven't seen you this animated about anything in 2 years. So yeah, I'm with you. But we're doing this smart. Proper planning, clear objectives, measurable outcomes, not just throwing money at problems." "Agreed. I want to do this right." They spent the morning mapping it out. The foundation would need staff, a real mission statement, partnerships with existing organizations. Ava wanted to focus on skilled trades, electricians, plumbers, mechanics, carpenters, people who worked with their hands and barely scraped by despite being essential to keeping society running. We could start with a pilot program, Marcus suggested. Small scale, maybe 50 participants. See what works before we expand. No, we start big or we don't start at all. I want 100 participants in the first cohort. Full toolkits, training stipends, business development courses. Everything they need to level up. That's going to cost, I don't care what it costs. I have the money. Let's actually use it for something. By noon, they had a rough framework. Marcus left to start pulling together a team, and Ava sat alone in her office, staring at the proposal on her screen. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was building something that mattered. Her phone rang. Robert Chen, probably calling to follow up on yesterday's disaster of a meeting. Robert, she said, answering. Ava, I wanted to check in. That meeting was rough, and I know Patricia and David can be harsh. Are you holding up okay? The genuine concern in his voice surprised her. Robert had been her first investor, had believed in her when she was just a kid with an idea and no track record. She owed him honesty, at least. I'm actually doing better than I have in a long time, she said. I know the numbers aren't great, but I have a plan. For the company? For me. And maybe for the company too, indirectly. She told him about the foundation, about her vision for it. He listened without interrupting, which was one of the things she'd always appreciated about Robert. That's ambitious, he said when she finished. I know. It's also not what I expected. You've always been so focused on growth, on scaling, on dominating the market. Yeah, well, maybe I was focused on the wrong things. There was a pause. Then Robert said, Can I tell you something? When you first pitched me 7 years ago, you weren't talking about market domination. You were talking about making tools that helped small businesses compete with big corporations. You wanted to level the playing field. That's why I invested. Ava felt something twist in her chest. I forgot about that. I know, you got successful, and success changes people. It changed you. Not in bad ways necessarily, but you lost something. That fire you had, that sense of purpose beyond just winning. He paused. This foundation thing? It sounds like you're trying to find it again. Maybe I am. Then I support it. Just don't let it distract you from keeping this company running. Patricia and David aren't wrong that we need to see improvement. You will. I promise. She hung up and sat there, thinking about what he'd said. She had lost something. Somewhere between the garage startup and the billion-dollar valuation, she'd stopped asking why any of it mattered and started just trying to prove she could do it. That night, she went back to Liam's house. This time she called first. Marcus had found his number through some database the company subscribed to, which felt invasive but necessary. He sounded surprised to hear from her. Ava? I need to talk to you. Can I come by? There was a pause. Emma's got school tomorrow. It's a school night. I know. I won't stay long, please. Another pause, longer this time. All right, come by. She drove out as the sun was setting, turning the mountains gold and orange. Liam was waiting on the porch when she arrived, and he didn't look particularly happy to see her. This is becoming a habit, he said. I know. I'm sorry. But I needed to tell you something. She climbed the porch steps, stood facing him. You were right. About everything. I was running from the wrong things, and I was too scared to make the choices I needed to make. Okay. So I'm making them now. I'm starting a foundation, a real one, not just a tax write-off, to help people like you, tradespeople, handymen, people who work hard and barely get by. I want to give them tools, training, support, help them build real businesses. Liam studied her carefully. That's good. People need that. I want you to help me. What? You know this world? You know what people actually need, not what I think they need from my ivory tower. I want you to consult. Help me design the programs, make sure we're actually doing something useful. Ava, I'm not a consultant. I'm a handyman. Exactly. That's why I need you. She stepped closer. I don't know how to do this. I know how to run a tech company, how to write code, how to negotiate with investors, but I don't know how to actually help people. You do. Please. He looked at her for a long moment, and she couldn't read his expression. Finally, he said, Come inside. Let's talk. Emma was at the kitchen table doing homework, and she lit up when she saw Ava. You came back again. I did. Your dad and I need to talk about something boring, but I brought you something. She pulled a small bag from her purse. She'd stopped at a bookstore on the way. I heard you like science. Emma opened the bag and gasped. It was a beginner's astronomy kit, complete with a small telescope and a star chart. This is so cool, Dad, look. That's very generous, Liam said, but his tone was careful. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. They sent Emma to her room to set up the telescope by her window, and Liam made tea while Ava explained her plan in more detail. The pilot program, the training courses, the business development support. He listened without interrupting, occasionally asking questions that cut right to the heart of potential problems she hadn't considered. Most tradespeople don't fail because they lack skills, he said. They fail because they don't know how to bid jobs properly, or they're terrible at collecting payment, or they don't understand taxes. You need to teach business basics, not just technical skills. That's exactly why I need you. I wouldn't have thought of that. And the toolkits are nice, but tools are useless if people don't have transportation. A lot of guys like me are one broken truck away from losing everything. Ava pulled out her laptop and started taking notes. For the next 2 hours, they went through every aspect of the program, with Liam poking holes and suggesting fixes. His insights were practical, grounded in real experience rather than theory. By the time they finished, Ava's initial proposal had been completely transformed into something that might actually work. This is good, Liam said finally. This could really help people. So you'll do it? You'll consult? He hesitated. I don't want your money, Ava. This isn't charity. This is work. Real work that I need you to do. I'll pay you the same rate I'd pay any consultant, which is probably more than I make in a month. So, you're providing valuable expertise, like, that's worth compensating fairly. Liam shook his head, but he was almost smiling. You don't give up, do you? Not when something matters. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. All right, I'll help, but on one condition. What? You actually show up, not just at meetings, but in the field. You want to help tradespeople? Then spend time with them. Learn what their lives are actually like. Not from a distance, but up close. Done. I want that anyway. Okay then. He held out his hand. You've got yourself a consultant. She shook it, and the contact sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with business. She pulled back quickly, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing in his small kitchen. I should go. It's late. Yeah. But neither of them moved. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, and Ava felt something shift between them. Not quite attraction, or not just attraction, but recognition. Like they were two people who'd been looking for something they didn't know how to name, and maybe they'd found it in each other. Ava? Emma's voice came from upstairs. Can you come see the stars? The moment broke. Ava followed Liam upstairs to Emma's room, where the little girl had the telescope pointed out the window at the night sky. Look, there's the Big Dipper, Emma said excitedly. And that bright one is Venus, I think. Ava looked through the telescope and saw the stars, bright and clear in the mountain darkness. In the city, she never saw stars. Too much light pollution, too much everything. But out here, they were everywhere. It's beautiful, she said. Dad says Mom is up there somewhere, Emma said quietly, watching over us. Liam's hand tightened on the doorframe, and Ava saw the grief cross his face before he controlled it. She wanted to say something comforting, but what could she say? She didn't believe in heaven or angels or any of the things that might make that loss easier to bear. I bet she's proud of you, Ava said instead, for being so smart and brave. Emma smiled at that and went back to looking at the stars. Liam walked Ava to the door, and they stood on the porch in the cool night air. Thank you, Ava said, for agreeing to help, for everything. Thank you for caring enough to try. She drove home with her mind full of stars and possibilities. The next 3 months were the hardest and best of Ava's life. She split her time between the company and the foundation, which meant 18-hour days and almost no sleep. But unlike before, the exhaustion felt purposeful. She was building something that mattered. Liam was true to his word. He showed up to meetings, pushed back on ideas that sounded good but wouldn't work in practice. and introduced her to people in the trades who became the foundation's first advisors. And he made her keep her promise about getting her hands dirty. She spent a day shadowing a plumber, learning how much physical toll the work took. Spent another day with an electrician, watching him navigate a client who kept changing requirements without wanting to pay more. Went out on jobs with Liam himself, seeing firsthand how he interacted with clients, how he priced work, how he managed to maintain his integrity in an industry that often rewarded cutting corners. Most people think we're just manual labor, one electrician told her during a coffee break. They don't see the skill involved, the knowledge, the problem solving. They think anyone with a wrench can do what we do. Ava thought about her company, her employees with their computer science degrees and stock options. She paid them 6 figures for writing code. Meanwhile, the guy who'd kept her office building's HVAC system running through a brutal summer probably made a third of that. The foundation launched quietly, with a small ceremony that Ava almost canceled 3 times because of nerves. But Liam insisted. "You need to show your face," he said. "Let people see that you're serious about this." So she showed her face, stood in front of a room full of tradespeople and talked about why the foundation mattered, what they hoped to achieve, how they wanted to help. Her voice shook at first, but then she found her rhythm. These weren't investors or board members. They were real people with real problems, and she had real solutions to offer. The first cohort filled up within a week. 100 people, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, mechanics, all hungry for a chance to level up. The foundation provided toolkits worth $5,000 each, covered the cost of licensing courses and certifications, and offered business training taught by volunteers from Ava's company. "You're poaching my employees," Marcus complained after the 3rd software engineer volunteered to teach bookkeeping basics. They volunteered. Besides, it's good for morale. It's chaos. But yeah, morale is through the roof. The company didn't fall apart without her constant attention. If anything, it ran better. She'd been forced to delegate, to trust her team, to stop micromanaging every decision. The board still grumbled about the numbers, but they were improving. Slowly, but improving. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, between foundation meetings and company deadlines and site visits, Ava realized she was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. She was having coffee with Liam at his house one Saturday morning. They'd gotten into the habit of weekend planning sessions. When Emma asked the question that changed everything. "Are you and Dad dating?" Ava nearly spit out her coffee. Liam looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Emma, that's not... We're just working together," he said. "But you like each other. I can tell." "We're friends," Ava managed. "Mom and Dad were friends first," Emma said matter-of-factly. "He told me. Then they fell in love and got married and had me." "Emma, go finish your homework," Liam said, his ears bright red. "I did finish it. Can I go to Sophie's house?" "Yes, go." Emma left, still grinning, and Liam and Ava sat in awkward silence. "Sorry about that," Liam said finally. "She's been watching too many romantic comedies." "It's fine. We should probably talk about it, though." Ava's heart started pounding. "Talk about what?" "About the fact that Emma's not entirely wrong." Liam set down his coffee cup carefully. "I do like you, Ava. More than I probably should, given that we're working together." "I like you too," she said quietly. "But this is complicated. You're my boss, technically, and we're from completely different worlds, and I have Emma to think about." "I know. And you're still figuring out your life. The last thing you need is a relationship with a single dad who lives in a house that costs less than your car." "Don't do that," Ava said sharply. "Don't decide what I need." "Then what do you want?" It was the same question he'd asked her months ago, but now she had an answer. "I want this. Us. Whatever this is. I want to keep having coffee in your kitchen and arguing about program design and watching Emma grow up. I want to build something real with you, not just the foundation, but a life." Liam looked at her for a long moment. "You're sure? Because I'm a package deal. Me and Emma. That's not going to change." "I wouldn't want it to change. She's part of why I..." Ava stopped, the words catching in her throat. "Part of why you what?" "Part of why I fell in love with you." The silence that followed was deafening. Ava couldn't believe she'd said it out loud, couldn't take it back, couldn't do anything but sit there and wait for him to respond. You fell in love with me, Liam repeated slowly. Yes. The billionaire CEO fell in love with the broke handyman. You're not broke, and I'm not that much of a billionaire after funding the foundation. He laughed at that, and then he was moving around the table, pulling her up, kissing her like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. She kissed him back, and it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been but always needed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Liam said, "I love you too," in case that wasn't clear. It was pretty clear. Good. Now we just have to figure out how to make this work. We will, Ava said, one day at a time. The foundation's first graduation ceremony took place 6 months after launch. All 100 participants had completed the program, and most of them had already seen their income increase by 30 to 50%. Some had started their own businesses. Others had moved into supervisory roles. All of them had stories about how the program had changed their lives. Ava stood backstage, more nervous than she'd been for any investor presentation, while Liam gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You've got this," he said. "What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up. They'll forgive you. They know you care." She walked onto the stage to applause and saw the faces in the crowd. People she'd gotten to know over the past months, whose stories she'd heard, whose struggles she'd witnessed. And standing with them were her employees who'd volunteered, board members who'd grudgingly admitted the foundation was good PR, and investors who'd stopped complaining once they saw the positive press. 6 months ago, Ava began, I was in a car accident. Someone I'd never met pulled me out of that burning car without hesitation, without asking who I was or what I could give him in return. He just helped because helping was the right thing to do. She found Liam in the crowd, holding Emma's hand, both of them watching her with pride in their eyes. That person taught me something important, that worth isn't measured in dollars or stock prices or quarterly earnings. It's measured in the impact you have on real lives, in the people you help, in the community you build. She looked at the graduates. You all work in jobs that keep society running. You fix what's broken, build what's needed, maintain what keeps us safe and comfortable. And for too long, that work has been undervalued and underpaid. The crowd was silent, listening. This foundation is my attempt to change that, to provide the tools and training and support that let skilled workers thrive. But more than that, it's my attempt to say thank you to the person who pulled me from that car, yes, but also to all of you, for the work you do, the skills you bring, the lives you improve every single day. The applause when she finished was thunderous. People stood, some wiping tears, others just smiling. Ava made it through the rest of the ceremony on autopilot, handing out certificates, shaking hands, accepting thanks. Afterward, at the reception, one of the graduates approached her. His name was Miguel, a carpenter who'd used the foundation's support to start his own furniture business. Miss Sinclair, I just wanted to say, this program changed my life. I was working for a company that treated me like I was replaceable. Now I have my own shop, my own clients. I'm building things I'm proud of. I'm glad we could help, Ava said. No, you don't understand. My daughter sees me differently now. She sees that what I do matters, that I'm building something. That's worth more than any amount of money. Ava thought about Emma, about how she saw Liam. The pride in her voice when she talked about him, the certainty that he was the best dad in the world because he cared and tried and showed up every day. Your daughter is lucky to have you, Ava said. I think we're both pretty lucky, Miguel said, and moved on to make room for the next person. The reception lasted hours. By the time it wound down, Ava was exhausted but glowing. Liam found her as she was saying goodbye to the last stragglers. You did good, he said. We did good. This wouldn't exist without you. It wouldn't exist without you either. That's kind of the point. They drove back to his house, their house now, technically, since Ava had been spending more nights there than at her penthouse. Emma was already asleep when they arrived, having been dropped off earlier by Liam's neighbor. They checked on her together, a routine they'd fallen into, and Ava felt that same sense of rightness she got every time she saw Emma sleeping peacefully. She asked me today if you were going to be her new mom, Liam said as they headed downstairs. Ava's heart skipped. What did you say? I said that was up to you and her, and that we'd figure it out together as a family. He pulled her close. Was that okay? That was perfect. They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, and Ava thought about how far she'd come. From the penthouse to this small house. From CEO to partner in a foundation that actually mattered. From lonely and driven to loved and purposeful. I'm thinking about stepping back from the company, she said quietly. Liam pulled back to look at her. Seriously? Not completely, but maybe moving to chairman instead of CEO. Let someone else run the day-to-day while I focus on the foundation. It's growing faster than we expected. We could do a second cohort, maybe expand to other cities. That's a big decision. I know, but I've been thinking about what you said, about making sure I'm running toward the right things instead of away from the wrong ones. The company doesn't need me anymore. Not really, but the foundation does. And so do you and Emma. We'll support whatever you decide, Liam said. You know that. I do. She kissed him softly. Thank you for pulling me out of that car. Thank you for letting me. 6 months later, Ava stood on a different stage in a different city, announcing the foundation's expansion. She was no longer CEO of her company. She'd stepped down to chairman, letting her former CTO take the reins. The board had fought her at first, but the numbers didn't lie. The company was thriving under new leadership, and Ava was free to focus on work that actually fed her soul. The foundation now operated in 5 cities, serving 500 participants. They'd added new programs for women in trades, for veterans transitioning to civilian work, for young people who wanted to learn skills instead of going to college. Every program was designed with input from the people it served, and every decision was made with the goal of creating real, lasting impact. Liam was with her on stage, introduced as the foundation's director of programs. He'd quit handyman work to take the role full-time, though he still took the occasional job when someone really needed help. Emma was in the front row, sitting with Ava's parents, who'd flown in for the event and were still trying to understand how their achievement-driven daughter had turned into this person who cared more about tool libraries than stock prices. We started small, Ava told the crowd. One person pulling another from a burning car, one choice to help without expecting anything in return. But that one choice created ripples. It changed my life, which changed how I used my resources, which changed the lives of hundreds of people who are now changing their communities. She paused, looking at Liam, at Emma, at the graduates in the audience. That's the thing about doing the right thing. You never know where it leads. You just know it matters. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it leads you exactly where you needed to be all along. The applause was loud, but Ava barely heard it. She was too busy watching Emma stand up and cheer, watching Liam smile at her with pride and love, watching the life she'd built, not with money or power or ambition, but with purpose and connection and the courage to choose differently. After the event, they went back to the hotel where Ava's parents were waiting. Her mother, still formal despite the years, studied Liam carefully. So you're the one who changed my daughter's life, she said. I think we changed each other's lives, Liam replied easily. She gave up being CEO for you. She gave up being CEO for herself. I just happened to be here when she figured out what she actually wanted. Ava's father laughed at that. I like him. He doesn't let you steamroll him. Nobody steamrolls me, Dad. That's not what Liam here is saying. They had dinner together, and Ava watched her parents slowly warm to Liam and Emma. Her mother taught Emma how to fold napkins into swans. Her father and Liam discovered a shared love of old Western movies. It wasn't perfect. Her mother still made comments about Liam's background, still worried that Ava was throwing away her potential, but it was real. Later, back in their room with Emma asleep in the adjoining suite, Liam pulled out a small box. I was going to wait, he said. Do this properly, with flowers and a speech. But I'm not good at waiting, and you're not good at traditional, so... Is that what I think it is? Ava's voice came out barely a whisper. Depends on what you think it is. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver band with a small diamond. It's not fancy. I know you're used to... It's perfect, she interrupted. Everything about this is perfect. I haven't asked the question yet. Then ask. Liam dropped to one knee, and despite everything, despite the foundation and the months they'd been together, and the life they'd already built, Ava's heart started racing like this was a surprise. Ava Sinclair, will you marry me? Will you be Emma's mom and my wife and my partner in all the crazy things we're going to build together? Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Everything about this fit perfectly. They got married 3 months later in Liam's backyard, with Emma as the flower girl and Marcus as Ava's maid of honor, because why not break all the traditions at once? The guest list was small: family, close friends, foundation staff, a few key people from Ava's old company. No investors, no board members, no one who was there for networking or appearances. The ceremony was simple. They wrote their own vows. Liam promised to always tell her when she was being too intense, to remind her that rest wasn't weakness, to build a life with her that mattered more than any bottom line. Ava promised to always value what he brought to the table, to never take their family for granted, to choose them over work every single day. Emma added her own vow, unprompted, standing between them with complete seriousness. I promise to clean my room at least twice a week and not complain about homework and love both of you forever. There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. At the reception, Robert Chen pulled Ava aside. You know, when you first told me about stepping down as CEO, I thought you were making a mistake, throwing away everything you'd built. And now? Now I think you're the smartest person I know. You built a company. That's impressive. But you built a life. That's rare. Marcus appeared next to them, slightly drunk and very emotional. I just want you to know you're my favorite boss ever. Even though you're not technically my boss anymore, you're still my favorite. I love you too, Marcus. Don't leave me alone with the new CEO. He doesn't understand my organizational system. Your organizational system is chaos. It's curated chaos. There's a difference. Ava laughed and hugged him, then went to find her new family. Liam was teaching her father how to use the grill properly. Emma was showing Ava's mother the birdhouse they'd built together, and everything was loud and messy and absolutely perfect. That night, after everyone had left and Emma was asleep, Ava and Liam sat on the porch swing, watching the stars. I keep thinking about that night, Ava said. The storm, the crash. How different things would be if you'd just driven past. I wouldn't have driven past. I know. That's kind of my point. She leaned into him. You saved my life that night. Not just from the car, but from the life I was living. The one that was killing me slowly. You saved mine too, Liam said. I was stuck, doing the same thing every day, telling myself it was enough because I was being a good dad. But I'd stopped dreaming, stopped thinking there could be more. Then you showed up and reminded me that you can have both, purpose and security, impact and stability. We make a good team. The best. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came from really knowing someone. From choosing them every day, not just in the big moments, but in the small ones. From building something together that was bigger than either of them alone. A year later, the foundation had expanded to 15 cities and served over 2,000 participants. Ava and Liam ran it together, with Emma helping out on weekends when she wasn't busy with school and friends. They'd moved to a bigger house. Ava had insisted, though she'd let Liam pick it out. And she'd finally sold the penthouse, donating most of the furniture to a charity that helped people transitioning out of homelessness. The company she'd founded continued to thrive without her. She attended board meetings quarterly, voted on major decisions, but trusted the new leadership to handle the rest. It was strange at first, letting go of something she'd built. But every time she felt the urge to micromanage, she'd remember what mattered. And it wasn't quarterly earnings or market share. She was in the workshop. They'd built a small one behind the new house, teaching a Saturday class on basic home repair when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but the number was familiar. This is Ava. Ms. Sinclair, this is Miguel. From the first cohort? Of course I remember. How are you? I'm great. Business is booming, but that's not why I'm calling. He paused. My nephew just got out of the army. He's struggling, doesn't know what to do with himself. I told him about your foundation. Is there any way? Send me his information. We'll get him into the next cohort. Just like that? Just like that. That's what we're here for. She hung up and went back to teaching, showing a room full of people how to patch drywall properly. It was such a small thing, such a simple skill, but she could see the pride on their faces as they got it right. The satisfaction of learning something useful, something that would save them money and give them confidence. This was worth more than any board meeting, more than any investor call, more than all the success she'd chased for so long. That night, Emma asked for help with a school project about heroes. "Who's your hero?" Ava asked, settling next to her at the kitchen table. "You and Dad," Emma said immediately, "because you help people." "There are lots of people who help people. Police officers, firefighters, doctors." "Yeah, but you help people like us, regular people. Dad says that's harder because regular people don't get attention or money or awards. They just get a thank you and sometimes not even that." Ava felt tears prick her eyes. She looked up and saw Liam in the doorway, watching them with that soft expression he got sometimes. "Your dad's right," Ava said. "But you know what? The thank you is enough. Knowing you made a difference, that's enough." Emma went back to her project, and Liam came to sit next to Ava. "She's not wrong, about you being a hero." "I'm not a hero. I just had enough money to do something useful with it." "You had money before. You didn't do anything useful with it then." "Because I didn't know how. You taught me." "We taught each other," Liam corrected and kissed her forehead. Later, after Emma was in bed, they sat on the porch again. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments at the end of the day. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Tonight, they were quiet, watching the stars and thinking their own thoughts. "Do you ever regret it?" Liam asked. "Giving up the company, the power, all of it?" Ava didn't even have to think about her answer. Not for a second. Even when the foundation is frustrating? When we can't help everyone who needs it? Especially then, because the frustration means I care. And caring is better than being numb. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, driven, successful, empty. That woman wouldn't recognize this life, wouldn't understand choosing a small house over a penthouse, a handyman over a CEO, impact over income. But that woman had also been drowning. She just hadn't known it until someone pulled her out of the water. "I love you," she said to Liam. "I love you too. Even when you get that look in your eye that means you're about to propose some crazy expansion plan. We should expand to 10 more cities." There it is. They laughed together, and somewhere inside the house, Emma called out that she couldn't sleep. Liam went to check on her, and Ava stayed on the porch, looking at the stars. She'd come so far from that night in the storm, from the burning car and the moment everything changed. But in a way, she was grateful for that accident, grateful for the storm that forced her off the road, for the tree that made Liam stop, for every choice and circumstance that led to him pulling her free. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find what mattered. Sometimes you had to burn down the old life to build something better from the ashes. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, a stranger became a friend, became a partner, became a family. A simple act of kindness became a foundation that changed thousands of lives. A single moment of choosing to help became a lifetime of choosing to matter. Ava touched the ring on her finger, simple silver that had replaced the expensive watch she used to wear. She thought about Miguel's nephew, about the next cohort of participants, about all the people they'd help and all the lives they'd change. But mostly she thought about the man inside putting their daughter to bed, about the family they'd built, about the life they were living that was messy and complicated and absolutely real. She thought about how a handyman and a billionaire weren't supposed to make sense. But here they were anyway, making sense in all the ways that mattered. And she smiled because sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes rescue was a two-way street. Sometimes the person you saved ended up saving you right back. The door opened and Liam came out, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed her one and sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Emma's asleep. She wants you to read to her tomorrow night." "I will." And she asked if we could build another birdhouse. "Apparently one isn't enough. We can build as many as she wants." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea, watching the stars. Tomorrow there would be work. The foundation, the programs, the endless needs they were trying to meet. Tomorrow there would be challenges and setbacks and moments of doubt. But tonight there was this: the porch swing and the stars and the person she loved, the daughter sleeping upstairs and the life they'd built together. The knowledge that she'd found her way home to a place she hadn't known existed. And that was more than enough. That was everything.